Hey guys!
It's your boy Agent.
How's it going? It's been a hot minute since I've last made a video, and by hot minute I mean never. This is my first video, so yay! I am so excited right now. Yeah. So basically, I'm gonna be teaching you guys how I shoot my portraits in manual mode. So first things first, this doesn't necessarily have to do with shooting in manual, but I'm just gonna point it out to you guys because this is the lens that I use, and I think it makes a big difference, specifically if you're shooting portraits. This lens right here is a 35mm lens, Sigma lens to be precise. The aperture is f1.4. This thing is not cheap. It's $900. I don't even know why I spent this much on this. Anyways, we'll talk about that later. Basically, this is a really good portrait lens, and I highly recommend it. This is the lens that I've been using for a lot of my most recent photo shoots. If you want to take pictures that look as good as mine, no, I'm just kidding. That sounded hella conceited. Anyways, when it comes to shooting in manual mode, there are 3 main settings that you want to consider. Number 1, aperture. Number 2, exposure or ISO. And number 3, shutter speed. So let's go ahead and start with ISO because I think it's probably the easiest setting to understand. And ISO essentially changes the brightness of a photo. So right now, this video that you are watching, my camera is set to ISO 800. Now for the ISO setting, I try to avoid raising it over 800, or 1600 is like the max that I'll do, because if you raise the ISO too high, then the image or the video quality will become grainy and muffled and it won't look right, unless that's like the look that you're going for. Like, I know sometimes people will intentionally add grain to their photos to like make it look more vintagey or whatever. But for my taste, I prefer like a smooth, clean photo. And by avoiding taking that ISO over 800 or over 1600, the photos look much cleaner, much crisper. So that's for ISO. Moving on to aperture, which is the second setting to consider. Aperture basically affects the depth of field of an image. So like right now, this video is set to 4.0 aperture. The higher the aperture, the more the picture is in focus. I don't know if that makes sense. So like the background, right now, you can see like a good amount of the background, right? Now if I set the aperture to a lower number, then the background would be more blurry and I would be in focus. So like I would be in focus and the background would be more blurry. So basically, I like to keep my portraits at between 1.4, which is the lowest setting, and 2.5, because if you lower the aperture too much, then you're risking the chances of the photo being blurry. I like to keep my aperture at around 1.4 minimum. I try not to do 1.4, but sometimes I will. But I tend to try to keep it at like 2 or 2.5, like in that range. So that's aperture. Now moving on to shutter speed. Shutter speed is essentially how fast your camera is snapping the picture. Now the higher the shutter speed, the darker the image will be, so you don't want to make your shutter speed too high or you'll have to raise up the ISO. Everything works together, all the settings work together. So each setting affects the brightness of your photo. I try to keep my shutter speed at least 2/50th of a second or higher. Normally I'll try to keep it at like a thousandth of a second or like 1,500ths of a second, because then you can have more movement, like the model can move more and the image will still be clear and crisp. So that's what I try to go for. So now that you guys are pretty familiar with all three of the settings, I'm just gonna explain to you like how I would shoot with all those settings in conjunction with each other. Like I'll give you an example. So right now it is currently raining, but I'm just gonna assume that it's overcast and like I'm shooting overcast. So if I were to shoot like in an overcast day where the lighting is not harsh, which is really ideal. I love shooting in overcast because it creates this nice soft lighting on your subject. When I shoot in those conditions, I will tend to keep my ISO I'll keep it at like 200. I'll keep my aperture at 2.2, and then I'll keep my shutter speed at like 1/800th of a second. And then if that's too bright or too dark, then I'll adjust the settings accordingly. But that would be my base settings for like a cloudy day. Basically, that would be my base setting for any day, and then I would just adjust it accordingly. I hope I made sense to you guys. It's really not that complicated. It takes a lot of trial and error. Like when I first started, I had to put my camera on auto mode. I put my camera on auto mode and I just let the camera do its work. But you can really have a lot of control over your camera when you put it in manual mode. And it just, like I said, it just takes some practice. You'll learn your way around. And yeah, happy shooting, guys. That was the cheesiest thing that I've ever said.
Happy shooting!
Yeah, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thanks for watching. I'll try and make more videos like this. I really want to make more YouTube videos because this is my first one and it's a lot of fun to do. Yeah, I need to stop talking. Have a great day. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys thought about this video. Bye!